argument, there's this feminist media critic whose work you respect. Being an internet-savvy human in the information age, you sometimes share your opinions of her work on your various social media platforms. And you've noticed, whenever you speak positively of her, many different people come out to yell the same handful of things at you. It usually starts with, how can you support that con woman after she stole thousands of dollars from people? And you say, no, she didn't steal anything. She ran a crowdfunding campaign that people contributed willingly to. And, overwhelmingly, those people seem satisfied with their donations. And they say, yeah, she asked for $100,000 for a shitty little project. And you say, no, she got $100,000 because people got excited about her work and gave her more than she asked for. But the original pitch was only $10K. Also, how many times have you given that number to people without looking it up? And they say, yeah, she asked for $10K and then never finished anything. And you say, no, she finished the project earlier this year. Of course it took longer than it was originally pitched. You get 10 times what you ask for, and you're kind of obligated to make a bigger project, because if you didn't, that would be running away with 90 grand. Now, by this time you've noticed your interlocutor's position has changed from she stole from people to she asked too much to begin with to she took too long to deliver, as though these are all the same argument. And you also notice the pattern of the conversation. He says something short, quippy, and wrong. You give a detailed correction. He says something else short, quippy, wrong, and only tangentially related to his last point, and the cycle repeats itself. This goes on and on. And it's not, you've noticed, just this discussion. You find this manner of argument often when you express left-of-center beliefs. You talk about the election, someone says you vote Democrat because you must have a conservative father you hate. You talk about polyamory, someone says if you have more than one female partner, you must be a sexist. Or they just say you're faking a non-regional accent.
Someone with neuropathy typically experiences tingling, numbness, and/or burning in their legs and
sexist. Or they just say you're faking a non-regional accent. Yeah. The running theme here is all these people who ostensibly want a frank exchange of ideas spend a lot more time making accusations than asking questions. Because why ask what you believe when they can tell you what you believe and make you correct them? And if you ever don't go to the trouble of correcting them, must be because they're right. And you're not naive, you see what's going on here. This isn't about conversation. No, this is about boxes. When you say something cogent that they don't agree with, and they get the sinking feeling that you might start making sense, they need a reason not to listen to you. So they reach for a box to stick you in. Dishonest feminism, fake progressivism, daddy issue liberalism. No one in those boxes is worth listening to, which means as long as they've got you in one, they're not at risk of having their minds changed. This whole thing isn't even an argument with you. Not really. They're presenting themselves with arguments for why they don't have to listen to you. So your first reflex is to defy their expectations. Actually, my dad was a draft-dodging hippie who told me he loved me every day, and I never said what genders my partners are, but I promise they're all feminists. As for my accent, actually I don't know what to do with the accent thing, but the point is, I refuse to fit in your box. And if they can't put you in one, if they can't dismiss you outright, they'll have to engage with your argument. But if you've spent any time arguing with angry dudes online, and it is mostly dudes, you know what I'm about to say. They don't. This accusatory, condescending attitude never falters, because a technique that has permeated anti-progressivism is to never play defense. Now don't get me wrong, what I said about the right fitting the left into simplified boxes as a way of preserving their own egos, I do think that's a thing, at least for many people much of the time. And I think the reassurance it brings is why the technique stays so popular. But that framing is about how individual people are feeling in isolated moments, and leaves out the larger game that's being played. Because there is a long-term strategic value to never playing defense, and it's less to do with arguments than with attitude. From your perspective, this debate about the feminist is a joke. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He comes in hot without confirming any of his assumptions. The whole conversation is you repeatedly schooling an ignorant dipshit. But that's only if you're the fool who listens to what's actually being said. Never play defense is a strategy that looks past language to posture. The tone, the word choice, even the expressions on your faces. If you half focus your eyes and look not at the words, but at the flow of the conversation, you can see the dynamic at play. He says his short, quippy statement, and you give your detailed rebuttal. He then picks a single point from your response and attacks that as the new subject. Now, to an onlooker, the logical brain would register that he's leaving 90% of your argument on the table, and that by changing positions, he's conceding he lost the first round. But the lizard brain notices that he's always making the accusations, always in the dominant position, that he's always acting, and you're always reacting. Regardless of what is said, he displays all the outward signs of winning. So on a purely emotional level, he leaves the impression of being right. And I have never had an argument look like this that wasn't in public. This is a technique that means speaking not so much to the other person as to the people watching. Liberals tend to operate as though voters are beings of pure reason and neglect that rational people still have emotions, and those emotions factor into what they believe. And that long after this argument is over, when people only half remember what was said, what lingers on is what impressions the speakers made. Ronald Reagan coined the phrase, "If you're explaining, you're losing." The trick is, if he's always accusing, then you're always explaining. This technique of winning by looking like you're winning isn't new, and historically it's been used by both parties. But modern liberals seem especially susceptible to it because it plays on one of their big weaknesses, which is, and I say this with love, the liberal fantasy of putting someone in their place. Anytime a free speech warrior gets the Bill of Rights quoted to them, when racists get historical accuracy explained by an actual historian, liberals take screen caps. We put it on Storify. We pass that shit around like it's theater popcorn. We live for the day an ignorant prick gets dunked on. I remind you, this was the central conceit of an entire TV show.
I don't say homosexuality is an abomination, Mr. President. The Bible does.
Yes, it does. Leviticus
18:22.
chapter and verse. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions while I had you here. I'm interested in selling my youngest daughter into slavery as sanctioned in Exodus 21:7. What would a good price for her be? Does the whole town really have to be together to stone my brother John for planting different crops side by side? Can I burn my mother in a small family gathering for wearing garments made from two different threads? Think about those questions, would you? One last thing. Well, you may be mistaking this for your monthly meeting of the Ignorant Tight-Ass Club in this building when the president stands.
I've been married to Gabriel for 2 years, but I've never actually seen him. They say he's handsome and young.
Ignorant Tight-Ass Club in this building when the president stands. Nobody sits.
But let me ask you, in all these scenarios, who's doing all the explaining? The reason scenes like this are so satisfying is precisely because they activate the emotions. They present a world where giving a detailed explanation looks like winning, and where having one given to you looks like losing. Everyone wants to be Joseph Welch telling off McCarthy.
At long last, have you left no sense of decency?
But the right has learned that if you never look like you're losing, you can convince a lot of people that you're not. And if you keep your statements short and punchy, people will remember what you said better than they remember the long explanation for why it's untrue. If done correctly, you might even convince yourself that you know what you're talking about. Now, again, this is not exclusive to the right. This is how most teenagers argue, regardless of their politics, where it's less important to be right than it is to be better than someone. But mixed with control the conversation, see previous video, the right has a full-bodied cocktail for manipulating how the left argues. But where it gets dangerous is in how the alt-right has capitalized on this. This argument isn't just about sticking a woman in the lying feminism box so she doesn't have to be listened to. It's also signaling to anyone watching what box they should stick her in. Even if an onlooker recognizes that she literally did not con anyone out of their money, the idea that how much she asked for or how long she took to deliver are relevant to her credibility is still planted in their heads. It subtly suggests that the next time they feel threatened by a female media critic, maybe they should look at how much money she makes, how long her work takes to produce. Maybe they don't have to listen to her because they've got this handy box. So what's most valuable to the alt-right isn't who wins or loses any individual arguments, it's the mechanics of the argument itself. It's the boxes. Over the last several years, the far right has pushed hard on a number of reductive categories. The cultural Marxism box, the reverse racism box, even terms like beta and mangina are just shorthands for the failed masculinity box. The alt-right is a veritable box factory, putting huge swaths of leftist rhetoric, most especially that would rebut their core positions, into categories where they can be summarily ignored. And these myths have power if and only if they are immediately recognizable to a lot of people. And one function of this aggressive posturing is that they want to provoke an argument, to be so pompous that you are itching to publicly take this asshole down, which gives that asshole access to your followers. It's about them introducing a myth to your audience and reinforcing that myth for theirs. And that myth gets spread even when you feel like you're winning. And I can't tell you the best way to deal with this, but I do know one way, which is to keep control of your own story. When someone comes out the gate with accusations, it's a big red flag that they are not arguing in good faith, which means you are not required to argue with them. When someone says something untrue, you can just tell your audience what the truth is without acknowledging the lie or the one repeating it. A detailed explanation does land a lot better when it's not being contrasted with a soundbite. Decide for yourself how your audience gets acquainted with a popular fiction, and never be too proud to delete a comment. In this political climate, these debates have real impact on real people's lives. They are not, in fact, a game of football. So if someone tries to force you to play defense, you don't have to play.